You know what's fascinating about Michelangelo? Despite being one of history's most celebrated painters, he never really wanted to be one. In fact, when Pope Julius II commissioned him to paint the Sistine Chapel ceiling, he initially tried to turn it down. Can you believe that? Here's the thing, in his heart, Michelangelo was a sculptor. He loved the feel of marble beneath his hands, the process of releasing figures from stone. He once wrote, "I saw the angel in the marble and carved until I set him free." That's how deeply he connected with sculpture. What's even more interesting is that even while painting the Sistine Chapel, arguably one of the most magnificent pieces of art ever created, he would sign his letters as Michelangelo Sculptor. Not painter, not artist, but sculptor. It's almost like he was saying, hey, this painting thing, it's just my side gig. It really makes you think about passion and identity, doesn't it? Here's a man who created one of the world's most famous paintings, yet insisted he wasn't really a painter at all. Sometimes our greatest achievements come from the places we least expect. Picture this: Rome, 1498. A young artist just 24 years old stands before a massive block of marble. His hands, already calloused from years of wielding chisels and hammers, grip his tools with fierce determination. This is Michelangelo, and he's about to create something that will leave the world breathless for centuries to come. The Pietà, a sculpture so beautiful, so emotionally powerful, that it's hard to believe it was carved by someone so young. Imagine capturing one of the most tender moments in religious history. A mother cradling her dead son, her face showing both profound grief and divine acceptance. Every fold in Mary's robes, every strand of hair, every subtle expression, all perfectly preserved in cold, unforgiving marble. What's truly remarkable is that most artists spend decades perfecting their craft before attempting something this ambitious. But Michelangelo? He did it at an age when most of us are still figuring out our lives. It's the only piece he ever signed, and legend has it that he overheard visitors attributing the work to another artist. That night, he secretly carved his name across Mary's sash, proud to claim this masterpiece as his own. 5 centuries later, the Pietà still moves people to tears in St. Peter's Basilica, proving that true genius knows no age. Imagine spending 4 years of your life lying on your back, arm raised, painting a masterpiece that would captivate humanity for centuries. That's exactly what Michelangelo did with the Sistine Chapel ceiling. It wasn't just any paint job. We're talking about over 5,000 square feet of intricate frescoes, a canvas so vast, it's almost mind-boggling. Day after day, he'd climb up scaffolding, lie flat on his back, and work in this incredibly uncomfortable position. Paint would often drip onto his face, and his neck and back must have been screaming in pain. But his dedication never wavered. Between 1508 and 1512, through countless hours of physical strain, he created what would become one of humanity's greatest artistic achievements. Next time you're having a rough day at work, just remember, at least you're not painting upside down for 4 years straight. But here's something that might surprise you. This Renaissance master wasn't just a genius with a chisel and brush. These weren't just simple verses. They were deep explorations of love, the fears of growing old, and his spiritual journey. Just imagine him, after a long day of painting or sculpting, sitting down by candlelight to capture his deepest thoughts and poetry. It really shows us a whole different side to this legendary artist, one that's more human, more vulnerable, and maybe even more relatable than we ever knew. Did you know that one of Michelangelo's most remarkable achievements isn't a painting or sculpture, but something you can see from almost anywhere in Rome? When he was 71 years old, this Renaissance master took on what would become his final great project, the dome of St. Peter's Basilica. Despite his age, he poured his genius into creating what would become one of the most iconic structures in human history. Standing at 448 feet tall, this architectural marvel was so ahead of its time that it even inspired the design of the U.S. Capitol Dome in Washington, D.C. Though Michelangelo didn't live to see its completion, his vision of this perfect hemisphere rising above the Vatican continues to take visitors' breath away, nearly 500 years later. It's simply astonishing how one man's design could shape not just Rome's skyline, but the very way we think about architectural beauty.
Enjoying the video, correct? Make sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell. Please leave your feedback, hit like, share the content.
Picture this: Michelangelo, one of history's greatest artists, throwing what could only be described as a Renaissance-era tantrum. When Pope Julius II approached him to paint the Sistine Chapel ceiling in 1508, His response was basically, "Thanks, but no thanks." Can you believe it? The artist actually fought against creating what would become one of humanity's most celebrated masterpieces. He wasn't just hesitant, he was downright resistant, trying to convince the Pope to hand the job to someone else. You see, Michelangelo saw himself as a sculptor, not a painter, and was convinced this massive undertaking would end in embarrassing failure. Talk about a plot twist. The very project he dreaded would later become his most famous work and one of art history's greatest treasures. You know that feeling when someone sees potential in something others have written off? Well, that's exactly what happened with one of the most famous sculptures in history. Picture this, a massive block of marble lying abandoned in Florence for nearly 40 years. Two sculptors had already tried and failed to work with it, claiming it was too damaged and flawed to create anything worthwhile. But then came Michelangelo. Where others saw waste, he saw David. With extraordinary vision and skill, he transformed this rejected stone into what would become one of the most celebrated masterpieces in art history. A stunning 17-foot-tall statue that has captured imaginations for over 500 years. Just goes to show that sometimes the most beautiful things come from what others consider worthless. In an age when most people didn't live past 40, there was one Renaissance master who defied all odds. Michelangelo, the genius behind the Sistine Chapel, and David kept his chisel sharp and his creativity flowing well into his late 80s. Just imagine, while others his age were long gone, he was still climbing scaffolds, carving marble, and designing magnificent buildings. In fact, he was working on projects right up until the week he died at 88 years old. This wasn't just incredible for the 1500s, it was almost unheard of. Talk about passion and dedication. Michelangelo truly lived by the motto, "Art is long, life is short," though in his case, both were remarkably long. You know, while Michelangelo was undoubtedly brilliant, he wasn't exactly winning any popularity contests in the Renaissance art world. Most notably, he had this legendary feud with Leonardo da Vinci. Talk about a clash of titans. These two geniuses couldn't stand being in the same room together. Their personalities were like oil and water. Leonardo was this elegant, sophisticated gentleman, while Michelangelo was more, let's say, rough around the edges. But the drama didn't stop there. When the young upstart Raphael came onto the scene, Michelangelo was furious, convinced that Raphael was stealing his artistic style and ideas. I mean, imagine being so good that people copying your work becomes your biggest problem. These rivalries actually pushed all of them to create even more spectacular works. So maybe a little artistic tension isn't such a bad thing after all. Have you ever wondered how Renaissance artists achieved such incredible realism in their work? Well, let me tell you about Michelangelo's dark secret. In the dead of night, when the streets of Florence fell silent, the great master would sneak into local morgues and hospitals. There, by candlelight, he would carefully dissect human bodies, studying every muscle, every tendon, and every bone. Though this practice was strictly forbidden by the church at the time, Michelangelo's burning desire to perfect his art drove him to take these risks. This forbidden knowledge is what gave his sculptures and paintings their extraordinary anatomical precision. Next time you look at the magnificent David or the Sistine Chapel ceiling, remember, behind that perfection lies countless nights of secret anatomical studies that could have cost him everything.